Everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski are taking a look at one of the stakes races on Saturday at Keeneland. Race 6 is the Perryville Stakes, going 6 furlongs for the 3-year-olds. And Craig, for just a listed stakes race, there is a lot of quality signed on here. You can make a case for just about every runner in this field, and led by the even money morning line favorite Verifying, who is coming off a grade 1 placed effort in the H. Allen Jerkins.
I would agree with that. I'm actually surprised they're not taking a shot with him coming out of the Jerkins in a race like the Breeders' Cup Sprint, opting for this easier spot in a race which looks like he should be able to win. But I do think there's some horses who can give him a tussle.
Yeah, we've got horses who competed in the Kentucky Derby, like Confidence Game and Raise Cane, Verifying among them as well. Dr. Vanman, an up-and-coming sort. You could say the same thing about Post Time, and even Loyal Company on the outside has run some competitive races. So a lot to sift through, despite just 6 runners entered in this Perryville. Let's take a look at the pace projector for this race, and I guess not a big surprise given the small field, Craig, that we do have a favorites front runners designation here. It's a little bit murky, though. It's not exactly clear who is going to be on the early lead. Verifying has shown tactical speed at different points. The same for Confidence Game, but more so in 2-turn dirt races. So it's going to be interesting to see who has intentions to go to the front.
Yeah, this one is very murky for me. I'm not sure who's going to try to go to the front. Maybe Verifying from that inside draw once they get out and get good position. But I don't think this is a race that's going to have a lot of early speed. I think tactics are going to come into play quite a bit in this one.
Yeah, maybe the horse that has the best post position is the number 5, Dr. Vanman, who also possesses that tactical speed, but it's at least drawn outside of those 2 runners with speed. So his rider, John Velasquez, will certainly have some options in this first quarter mile. Let's go through this field in post position order, beginning with that morning line favorite, the number 1, Verifying. We're going to go 2 back in his past performances to check out his last victory in the Indiana Derby. And he's actually beating another horse that he's going to face here in Raise Cane as these 2 photo for the win. It's just a nose separating them at the wire. And Craig, Verifying runs fine in this race. He had earned some higher speed figures in his 2 surrounding efforts when he was a narrow second to Disarm and then Matt Witt. And then, of course, in that marred H. Allen Jerkins last time when he was second. And I guess he's going to take a lot of money off that huge speed figure that he ran at Saratoga. That 125 certainly makes him the horse to beat in this race. I've got to be honest, though, that Allen Jerkins is a race that I have a little bit of trouble with. We've seen a couple of runbacks out of that race that have been a bit of a mixed bag. Arabian Lion obviously came back to disappointed his next start. One in Vermilion got a huge fig for winning the race. I think we're still waiting for some confirmation about that number from him. And I would expect more of a speed figure in line with some of Verifying's prior races. I wonder if that's deserving of the favoritism that he's going to be.
Yeah, I wonder about that speed figure as well. And I don't say that lightly, being the guy who makes the speed figure. I think maybe the algorithm we use at Timeform US got thrown into a little bit of confusion by the breakdown of New York Thunder, who was setting that super fast pace. And it's just one of those where a horse who was well in front suddenly wasn't a participant anymore. And it's a sad story, obviously. But I also think maybe it affected that speed figure for all the horses. And maybe it shouldn't be quite as fast as it is. So as an even money shot in here, I mean, he can certainly win. I'll be interested to see how he's ridden by Flavien Prat, how aggressive he gets out of the gate. I think that would be his best shot, but I don't think he's the layover that the morning line odds would suggest.
The number 2 is Confidence Game, and he'll be making his first run since the Kentucky Derby, going all the way back to May. We'll take a look at his final Derby prep race when he was a winner of the Grade 2 Rebel back in February. So this horse has only raced 1 time in the past 8 months. It's been a pretty light schedule this year for Confidence Game, but he looked good this day, winning in the slop over a solid field. We've seen some runners who finished behind him come back to win stakes later on in the year. Obviously, didn't quite run his race in the Kentucky Derby, though he was chasing a fast pace that day. We just don't really know if this is a horse that wants to go a 1-turn sprint, Craig. He did it a couple times early in his career with much lower speed figures. It feels like this might just be a starting point for him.
That's how I feel about this race. It's probably just a prep race, and the distance seems a little bit too short for him. And I also wonder, his big effort came over a sloppy track. Unfortunately, his trainer decided to train him up to the Derby off a February race, which didn't work out very well. And seems like something went wrong after the Derby, as he didn't make the work tab until just last month, really. So I'm not even sure if he would be fit enough for a race like this one.
The number 3 post time is an intriguing runner in this race, a Maryland bred who is undefeated in 4 career starts, winning all of those races by open lengths. We'll take a look at his most recent victory at Pimlico, coming back off the layoff. He had a setback back in the winter. We haven't seen him for a long time, but this is the way you want to see a horse return. There was no pace for him to close into. He moved up willingly to the quarter pole, and you could see he's winning this race just under a hands and heels ride. Very little encouragement, and that's basically how all of post time's victories have looked. Just no encouragement from the jockey, winning gear down at the end with his ears pricked. This horse has not yet run a speed figure, Craig, that says he's quite as good as the Verifyings or Ray's Canes or even Dr. Venkmans of the world. But this is a horse that has a lot of potential. I think it's interesting that a typically conservative trainer like Brittany Russell is shipping this Maryland bred to try this race.
I was going to make that point. Brittany Russell doesn't ship all that much, but when she does, she's proven pretty dangerous. She's taken down some pretty good races with horses who were overlooked a little bit, maybe because of that fact. He will have to improve quite a bit speed figure wise, but when you go back and watch his replays, I could see the case being made that he could very well do that.
The number 4 is Ray's Cane. And Craig, he's a horse that has spent most of his 3-year-old season running in 2-turn dirt routes, primarily a mile and a 16th, a mile and an eighth. He even tried the mile and a quarter in the Kentucky Derby and ran better than I expected that day. He actually had a bit of a trip, finishing 8th behind Mage. He hasn't won since the Gotham back in March, but he's run fine on a number of occasions, has actually validated that form. But I do think when you go back and watch that Gotham and see the explosive turn of foot that he displayed going one turn, I do wonder if this is a horse that might really benefit from the turn back in distance.
I'd agree with that because maybe his second most impressive race was a maiden breaking win where he just blew away a field that was pretty strong for a maiden race at Keeneland last fall in his 2-year-old season. So the cutback for one turn feels right for him. I wonder he's shown last on the pace projector. That probably isn't going to work out too well for him if he tries that here.
Yeah, he's faced Verifying 3 times this year, as you see in his time form USPPs, has been beaten by that foe all 3 times. But maybe the turn back is going to really help this guy. The number 5 is Dr. Venkman. Let's take a look at his most recent start at Del Mar when he was winning by over 5 lengths against Allowance Company. And I don't think we really know how good this horse is just yet, kind of like post time, Craig. He's been really untested in 2 career starts out in California. Unlike that foe, he's been running some faster speed figures, at least. The 116 time form US speed figure that he earned for this effort certainly puts him in the mix here. The problem I have is looking through the field that he faced last time. We've seen a couple of horses come back and significantly regress on the speed figure scale. I'm just not really sure what was in that race behind him, but at least he did win it the right way.
Yeah, and it's 4 of the 5 horses who were immediately behind him have regressed off of that race. One horse who ran last improved his speed figure, but did so move into a synthetic surface. So I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with the speed figure. I just think it was a very weak field, and maybe those horses ran a little faster than they normally would, chasing a horse that was just a lot better than them.
Yeah, he does ship out from California for trader Mark Glatt, who doesn't ship that many horses back to the East Coast or even Kentucky. So we'll see how he fares if able to bring his California form to this Perryville. And then on the outside is the number 6 Loyal Company, a horse that has tried stretching out on a couple of occasions, will turn back in distance here. Actually did so last time, going 7 furlongs, and will repeat that distance after finishing 3rd in the Harrods Creek. He was beaten by a good horse last time and Ever So Mischievous, but couldn't really make much of a dent in the late stages of that race. He had run some nice races at Ellis Park prior to that, particularly in that Ellis Park Derby behind Tumbarumba, a good horse in this division who's a little bit underrated. You can make a case for this guy, and he's got some competitive speed figures.
He does, particularly that race 2 back, as you mentioned, in the Ellis Park Derby, which is just a kind of a mile or a turn and a half race as they come out of that chute, similar to the Wilson chute at Saratoga. I like his post position in here. I like that he has some tactical speed. You'll see even when he had a race with a fast pace with those red colored fractions, he wasn't like dropping way too far out of it. So I actually give him a pretty big shot in here to rebound from that effort last time, where I think he was just way too wide on an track that wasn't all that kind to his style that day.
Well, let's throw up our picks for this Perryville Stakes. And I think both Craig and I are a little bit skeptical of that morning line favorite verifying, just expecting going out for the Brad Cox barn. He might be a little bit overbet in this race. So we're both going for bigger prices to try and beat him. And Craig, you're going to go with the horse that we were just talking about, the number 6, Loyal Company.
Yeah, I went with Loyal Company, even though we have this as a favors early. I'm almost treating this like a no speed race, as I really don't trust any of the speed horses. And I wonder if this horse with his good finishing kick can just work out a nice trip right in behind. And much like your selection, he's certainly going to be a nice price in here.
I will say I'm very interested in the number 4 Raise Kane. I've wanted to see him turn back in distance for quite a bit of time, so I'm happy that he's in this spot. But I've got to give a shot to the number 3 Post Time. I've just been following this horse's career, really impressed with everything that I've seen from him. This is the big test for him because he's never faced anything close to the level of competition that he's going to meet on Saturday at Keeneland. But feels like there's the potential that this horse could have quite a bit of ability. So the number 3 Post Time for me, and the number 6 Loyal Company for Craig in the Perryville Stakes on Saturday at Keeneland. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.